Hi, everyone. Thanks for tuning in today. If you like what we do here and want us to continue to pump out this great content, please make sure you subscribe to our channel and follow us on social media platforms. Your support will make a big difference. And a huge thanks to our sponsors. Are you thinking of buying or selling your home? Alessandro Divino is the realtor that puts you first. Visit alessandrodivinohomes.com today to start your real estate journey on the right track. And by ASF Sports and Outdoors, expert advice every day. ASF is the proud sponsor of the PrepZone Athlete of the Month. And now, let's head over to the podcast. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's episode of the PrepZone Podcast. My name is Stefano Divino. I'm your host, and I'm sitting here with Coach Ian Tapsall. How are you doing today, Coach?
Very well. Thanks very much for the invitation.
Oh, absolutely. It's a pleasure to have us here. Before we want to introduce you a little bit to our crowd, current Coach Ian has been the Staples Field Hockey coach since 9 years now, for 9 years.
Ninth year, yeah.
9 years, yeah. He's a four-time state champion, 16, 17, 18, and 19. I mean, 4 titles in a row, Coach.
It's not bad.
It's not bad at all,
bad,
right?
yeah.
I mean, it's impressive. You're also a lifetime member of the USFAJ. Saw that. I know you played professionally in Hounslow and Southgate hockey clubs in the UK. You've played in the US, the Masters World Cup in 14, 18, and 2022. It's 3 World Cups in a row. That's impressive as well.
Yeah, well, it's that was a lot of fun. I mean, especially getting involved with the cultures over there and meeting all these field hockey players from everywhere else. Also, it's not a professional sport when I played. I wish I'd got paid, but I hadn't gotten paid.
Right, yeah. I mean, just everything evolves, right? I mean, you've been looking nowadays what players are making and what it's like. You look at, I always listen to radio and some of this, the players are talking now. They're like, well, I wish I played 10 years ago.
Right.
Right. I mean, you also, you won 2 European Club Championships. You captained Greenwich, Connecticut men's team to 4 U.S. National Club Championships. Back-to-back, you were named a Northeast Coach of the Year to 16 and 17 by Max Field Hockey. So that's excellent. And you are a member of the Team USA.
Yeah, I've been playing in these Masters World Cups. It was originally, I think it was over 50, then over 55, and then over 60. So I think they still have an over 70s, but I don't think I'll be involved in that.
It's just traveling and playing, and like you said, meeting the people that that had this share the love for the sport for you. It's got to be something special.
Well, yeah, and I don't think people actually realize how popular the sport is worldwide, because I think the stat is that this is the second most popular sport in the world after soccer.
Really?
And the order used to be soccer, cricket, and hockey, but now I think hockey's just surpassed cricket. And I mean, you can go anywhere in the world. I'd tell my girls in the team, if ever you want to travel to Sydney or you want to travel to Europe, you can always find a hockey player and they'll always look after you for sure.
Yeah, and that's one thing that I know I experienced when I when we discussed having you on. I was so happy to accept the invitation. Then I started digging into it a little bit more, right? Looking at the programs and looking at everything. And I just found a lot of information, and I realized how big the community is.
Oh, it's massive. It's huge. I mean, the only reason we are held back in the States is because it's not officially a man's sport.
Yeah.
It's co-ed everywhere else in the world. That's why the numbers are higher. But we do have a U.S. men's team, but normally the male of the species here in the U.S. is playing, is playing ice hockey, is playing football, is playing baseball. So it's not such a big draw for men over here.
Yeah, and it's not to say that it'll change. It probably will change at some point. I just look at the growth of sports like pickleball. So our society is always evolving. So
for sure. I mean, look what happened with soccer, right? You just needed the necessary superstars to come in and the money to be invested, and now look where it is. So it might happen, but it's a long road for field hockey for sure.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. When I came to the United States, there was no professional soccer league.
Right.
And look where it is now.
Right, exactly.
Right? And it's just like in half of my lifetime. So it is, things can happily do that. I do want to start here by asking you, what was it like to win 4 straight state titles? What was that run like? How did it feel, and how was it like?
Well, I think it's a little surreal in as much as I had a 1-year learning curve with the team before to get to know the way they play, to get to know how Staples was as a school and the community. And it takes a little while to kind of brand a culture on a team, on a school. And by the second year, I knew I had a really good base of athletes. All I needed was athletes, and I needed athletes who could listen and learn. When we won it, it was really surreal because I never thought we'd win it that quickly. I never thought we'd win 4 in a row, even though the first one is a co-tie with Darien. Darien wants to say they're champions, so I'll say I'm champion too. So that's just the way it goes.
Yeah.
But it was surreal. But I had the right people, the right community, the right culture that they all bought into, and it worked out in the end. I mean, it hasn't sunk in because I don't really quite appreciate that 4 in a row is quite a feat. People tell me about it, but I'm still looking to get the 5th, the 6th, 7th, or the 8th, right. You know. So it's in the background. Maybe I'll never get the 5th, 6th, 7th, or 8th, but when I look back on it, I think I'll appreciate it more.
I think so, because I know, at least for me, it like the minute I saw it, you know, I know how hard it is to just, like, you know, because you go, like, when you win the first one, that second year, then everyone's gunning for you.
Right.
Right. And then becomes like their final, their World Cup final becomes that game against you. And in talking about that, it's when you mentioned Ariane, because I saw that Game Time Connecticut was doing like key games for the season. And October 2nd, they had it circled, Staples Ariane. Yeah, that was like, and I'm like, well, I guess then you brought it right up. I mean, is that really the two powerhouses of field hockey that we're looking at in our FCX?
I think if you look, since I've been here, I think that's definitely the case. I think there are other clubs, schools that are around that are certainly pushing. New Canaan, Wilton, Greenwich, Ridgefield. We've always been in like the top 5, top 6. And I think that influence is based on club participation, which has grown exponentially over the last few years. So it's sort of leveled out the competitiveness and the standard of those top 5, 6 clubs.
So when you look at your team this year, I mean, I saw that, you know, you still had great success. I think last year you were still in the FCX final and all that. So it's still like, how's the team looking this year? As far as, is it like, if you can spend a little bit, is it like a senior heavy team? Is it more underclassmen? Is it a rebuilding year? Or how are you looking at this year?
Well, I think we've got a good cross section. I've got 3 great captains. Catherine Aciel is a senior. Mm-hmm. She's been playing club and she's played for Staples team for as long as I can remember. Caroline Roshan is another club player who's going to be going to Franklin and Marshall, play D3. And a junior, we have Sophia Fidalgo, who's on the US girls national team. She's committed to Princeton. I mean, the base that I've got there is phenomenal. I've also got a Stanford commit in Tyler Osborne and a UConn commit in Emma Larrett. So the basis, the foundation is there. I think we have a great group of, I've got 4 freshmen on the squad. It's a pretty big squad this year. 4 freshmen who are really going to contribute. And I don't know that you can say there's one particular group of graduate years that is going to influence one more than the other. I think I have a great balance, but I also know that if the seniors graduate, I've got a great bunch of kids coming in from middle school and freshmen to take their place.
Yeah, and that's important, right? Because you always look at, I was talking to a freshman coach, and I asked him, I said, does it feel like you're starting over every year? And at the freshman level you are, but at the varsity level, you're always looking ahead, knowing that you're going to lose some players.
Right, and also, I mean, speaking to one of the college coach friends of mine said that, we recruit players to replace existing players. Mm-hmm. So if you have that standard of recruits coming in, it keeps competition going, but it also knows that you've got this funnel of people coming through who shouldn't really affect the balance or the skill level of the team that you have.
Yeah, and I think that's key to the success of the program, right? And then I know we were talking about, I was, again, from someone who's new to field hockey, I was looking, and I know it's a very dynamic sport and a fast-paced sport. And a lot of experience was walking by Jenny Parker and seeing you have a very excited crowd, always very loud, that's always into the games. Like you can't miss the games. But to someone who's new about field hockey and is trying to come in the sport, what would you say are some strategies and things they should look for and learn in the sport?
Well, the sport is very much set up the same way as soccer.
Okay.
The biggest difference that we have is we have no offside. So we can have players hanging out basically on the baseline. But the systems we use, I often look at the English Premier League and look at the systems they use with 5 defenders, 2 midfield players as a screen, 2 attackers. It's really similar to soccer. I think what else you also had to understand is that this is a sprinting sport because we have, unlike soccer, we can put substitutes on whenever we want.
On the fly. Okay.
So, I mean, that's more like ice hockey. So what I try and do is I try and find 11 players to start the game who I rank out of 100. Say, if they're all 100, I'll play them. and have 90s or 85s ranked on the bench. When they fall off from 100 to less than 90, then we keep bringing players in and supplying. But in terms of tactics, it's basically very similar to soccer.
And that's great. And I also want to touch on, I think you said earlier, you're talking about some of the commits you have. And as I was doing some research, I found that there's an incredible amount of, college players that you've gone through the program and you continue to nurture. And you mentioned a minute ago about the culture that you're building here with Staples, right? So as someone, and you've played at all professional levels of the sport, and I'm sure you're very familiar with the college recruiting process and the whole thing. I mean, can you speak a little bit about how you develop those athletes and keep the program at that level?
Club is very important.
Okay.
I think the days of having a non-club player on your squad are not gone. We still have some players who don't play field hockey in the off season, but that's because they're superior athletes more than anything else. College, if people play on a Staples varsity high school team, most of them, if not all of them, have college hockey at mind for when they graduate. It's not a ticket. I think it's an opportunity to stand out and get noticed so that you could probably enter a higher ranked college academically through sport, which is what I, as an advisor, I also do advise players to go into college. But without the club basis, it's pretty difficult to get kids into college. But we also have to consider also that Catherine Asel is an example. If you want to play D1, go to a big school with football, you've got to be really, really good. Really, really good. And if you don't think you can make that level, then you want to get it through academics, which I think Catherine's doing, and she'll get into a great school. But she's not looking to get into college playing field hockey. And I'm that's admirable. But I think to use the sport to get into more of a far reach college is what a lot of these kids do. And if they enjoy the sport, so much better for them when they have their college experience.
You mentioned being noticed, right? It kind of helps, it kind of puts you on the map, right? Because if all things are equal and you're going through academics, now you got someone who's got all this field hockey experience and can help the school at that point. It makes them stand out.
Oh, for sure. For sure. And also it's, the college coaches want these guys because they want successful programs at college. So it's got to the stage now, and I'm very grateful that because of our reputation at Staples, I get calls both as a high school coach regarding what my players are capable of, but also as a club coach. So I'm getting double exposure to the kids. And to me, the ultimate, other than winning, which is always the ultimate, getting these kids placed in places they want to go to school and to further their careers at college, and then obviously into the workplace and society as a whole is my aim. And a lot of the time that pans out that way, which is very satisfying.
Yeah, and I feel like the more that I talk to high school coaches, I realize the impact that you have not only on the field of play, but outside on the players' lives.
Yeah, I think it's, you're a team, you set standards, you set a culture. If our players can buy into that and can perform according to what we've set down as our sort of, not our rules or regulations, I said our standards, then I think I think that we can set them up for a good life after sport.
Yeah, and that's something great, right? Because it goes, you try to, you're like you said, standards. You're setting standards for their lives, not only now in high school, but also as they go through. And how often do players reach back to you and say, hey, this happened, this is, so I remember this you said, does that happen?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's what I mean. I've got some kids who graduated from Trinity College. I've got kids who graduated from other schools, and they always come back. They always say hello. We have a great alumni social media platform. They can all look at our Instagram. So they all know what's going on. And being in the Westport, locally in Westport, when I'm walking around, people pat me on the back and say hi, and I'm looking around the corner and say, oh, I haven't seen you for a couple of years, but thanks. I appreciate that.
Yeah, and that's got to be rewarding, right? I mean, as you're working through this, you're like, man, it's getting noticed, and you're making a difference in people's lives. And you just never go what a player's going through, right? I mean, they might come to practice and they might be, something, kids nowadays, so much pressure, but that just seems like an environment that they can just grow.
Well, they can grow for sure, but I also want them to enjoy it. I always say that, you go into a math lesson or a history lesson at school, and you hopefully you've got that 2.5 hours to look forward to at 3 o'clock where you can, you play hard, but it's enjoyable. It's a place where they really want to go to. I remember when I was at school, I didn't want to go to math class. I wanted to go and play rugby. I wanted to play cricket, or I wanted to play hockey, right? So hopefully that's the kind of, I'm lucky in as much as that is the environment that's given to me.
Yeah, I've been following the program on social media, and you mentioned school, and I see that, your players are always there's always like, test this, test that, and they're always like, getting that with the program, and that's unique. I don't really saw that with other programs.
Well, yes, I mean, I would say that that's something that is fulfilling as well. I mean, the fact that they are, everything that they're showing on Instagram looks to be with a smile on their face, but they know it's serious is what I want. I mean, that's what everybody wants.
Yeah, it just shows a little bit of how the entire culture is, right? And I want to ask you a question now that I think it's got to cater a little bit to our younger audience. And when they come in, when they're making the move from club, travel, what have you, into that high school team, what would be your advice for someone who's going to really try to make the team next year and stand out to you? What are you looking for in a player, or what can they do to better their chances to make that squad?
I think fitness is key. Everybody knows on our pre-season what's expected of them. And I don't think there's any excuse for people not to put in the work. They'd have to do that. I think they have to realize that it's not easy. I always say that we're trying to coach these kids at a college level at high school, which I think freshmen come in, and we don't cut any freshmen, but I've never wanted to do that. But I think some freshmen realize, well, okay, it's a little harder than I thought. But at least we're giving them the opportunity from when they get into JV that they know. But I think it's the realization that it's not easy. It's not. Socially, it's great, but it's demanding, and I think that's a better blend of what is needed from these kids when they come into high school.
And it's great that you do that, because that ties in what you told me. You're preparing them to play in college, and it's not going to be easy as they get older or they move into a more demanding program in college.
Right, but not all of them. I mean, those that want to go to college, we will absolutely try and give them a leg up to get there. But I also think that socially and from a community aspect, even if you're not going to play college field hockey, the fact that socially you're not awkward, and socially you can go anywhere and you'll be fine because you've been within this group of people. It sets them up for that.
Yeah, it's important to have your crew, right? To have the people you hang out with and you share interests, and you get accepted in that community.
Right. And then the other thing with field hockey being and the other full sports is, if you're making that transition from middle school to high school, you're not going into a school where you don't know anybody. You're going in, and the first people you see are high school players that you were in the town program with.
Yeah. And you just said that and brought back to memory for me, because when I went into high school, I was in Tennessee, and I was on the football team, was a kicker because of soccer and all things like that. But I remember, because I was going through practice in the summer. When I walked into high school, my first day, I had a lot of people I knew, and that made a huge difference.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, and it makes it a lot easier for. I mean, they know it, and they all know each other, because we have a great town program. As I said, that funnel that brings these kids into our program, and they turn up and they see each other, and they just, it's an easy transition for them, and I'm grateful that they come down to the field. When I ask them what their first day's like, or during the week what it's been like, they say, a piece of cake. No
That's fantastic. Coach, it was so great having you. I'm going to make sure, we if the opportunity to have you again, I'd love to have you back soon. And we always end the podcast with a little quick hit. So I'm going to give you some questions just to get so the audience can get more familiar with you.
All
a little bit off the field here.
Okay.
So I'm going to ask some questions. You just give the answer that comes to mind.
Sure.
All right. Favorite Tom Hanks movie?
Forrest Gump.
Morning person or night owl?
Neither. I like lunch.
Coffee or tea?
Well, I'm English, so...
That's why I have that question in there.
My answer is coffee.
That's why I had the question in there. Texting or calling?
Calling.
Introvert or extrovert?
Extrovert on the field.
Introvert off?
Nah, not really.
Spring or fall?
Fall.
Fiction or nonfiction?
Fiction.
Beach or sightseeing?
Sightseeing.
Sweet or salty?
Sweet.
Cake or ice cream?
Ice cream.
What is your hidden talent or skill?
Oh. Rollerblading.
Rollerblading. If you could have lunch with any historical figure, dead or alive, who would it be?
That's an interesting one. Interesting. Winston Churchill.
And lastly, if you could change one thing about the world, what would it be?
Wow. Climate.
Coach, thank you so much. It was awesome having you here. Hoping to have you again soon.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks very much for having me.